The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, New Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Ask for Candy, where we talk about healing, self-care, love, sex, relationships, and what it takes to be amazing on the daily. Who I am is CandiceHarperLoveCoach.com, and my purpose with this podcast is to create healthy romantic relationships all around the world through self-love, soul connections, and sweetness. But before we get to that, please take a moment to subscribe to Ask for Candy on Anchor, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you normally download your podcasts. Also, you can email us at askforcandypodcast@gmail.com if you want to leave comments, ask questions. We love to answer your questions in a later broadcast. Also, you can just tell us, whether you agree with us or not. It's okay if you don't. We love it when people want to mix up the conversation. So for those of you who've been listening, you know that for almost 9 years, I have been a relationship coach and a workshop facilitator, and I'm also a professional matchmaker with Luma Luxury Matchmaking, a service that brings high-end singles together to find their perfect love. Relationship coaching and matchmaking is my zone of genius, and the best part about it is that week to week, I get to grow and learn as I interact with hundreds of people around the most intimate parts of their lives. I get to take people on their journey from caterpillar to butterfly, unhappy with their love lives or their partners to ecstatic, and I get to teach people how to get out of their own way and tap into love as a limitless resource. I also get to hear and answer their questions. Sometimes I have answers, sometimes I got to do a little research, but I always get to grow and learn myself. Speaking of growing and learning myself, one of my favorite people who I always go and learn with whenever I encounter him, with me tonight to be a contribution to the conversation and to bring his nuggets of wisdom, my co-host. He's a self-proclaimed loving husband, father of 6, speaker, podcaster, blogger, vlogger, and a coach as well. He's the author of Relationship Conversations You Don't Want to Have, But Should Anyway, and 25 Ways to Be Loving. And he is a native of Washington, D.C. He has degrees from both Howard and George Washington University and has embarked upon a fascinating journey to uncover and discover what it means to love and how to discern when we are not being loving. His in-your-face declaration, I want to be loved and accepted in my relationship no matter what I do and you do too, is a powerful wake-up call to himself and to us all as we work to create the supportive, empathetic, and mutually fulfilling relationships that we so desperately want. So now my Frank is here with us and is excited to answer questions along with me and introduce us all to a loving conversation with the sincere hope that we will be more caring in the world and in our communities, beginning with our romantic relationships. Welcome, Frank. Say hello.
Hey. I'm ready to roll.
Yes. Woo! Yay. I love our weekly meetups. I love it when we get together. I always feel a little happiness when I know we're going to sit down and chop it up.
Yes, we do good, don't we?
Right? Absolutely. I was telling you before, we're going to have and for the people listening too, we might have a little, my dog has a Kong with peanut butter in it, so we might have some background sounds. I don't want anybody to think it's anything untoward.
They're dying.
Right. If you hear some sounds in the background, it's just my dog being occupied with a lump of peanut butter in his toy. But, how have you been, Frank? It's been a few days since we've spoken. How's things going? It's a new year. How you feeling?
I'm great. Life is good. I am enjoying just being around the house and the few times I've got to step out and do some errand or, whatever. Yesterday, went by to see my sister and my mother in one fell swoop. And nothing complicated. Just really, really easy. Yeah. Easy watching movies on Roku and, hey, just enjoying life.
I hear that. Let me ask you this question, because I always wonder with people, before the pandemic and the lockdowns and the quarantining and all of that stuff, there's those of us who our work was mainly online or it's a remote, and we already sort of had that kind of lifestyle where you're maybe home more than in an office. And I know that you as a speaker, like you travel sometimes and speak and things like that. But how has it been for you, since we started locking down and being home more often? Is it any different than your normal?
A lot less travel. But I like that. I'm not complaining at all. I love being home.
Do you?
So, yeah, I do.
You strike me as that kind of guy. I think that's cool, though. I've varied over the course of my life, where there's times where I liked being home a lot, too. And then there was a time in my life where I could not sit down. I was out all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I've gone through my phases of enjoying traveling and wanting to travel, but that hasn't been recently. Yeah. Once you do it, all of these towns and cities, as far as I'm concerned, are the same. Yeah. If you're not on the scene, and even if you're on the scene, they're all the same. You land and you want to hit a club or something like that and meet new people and just get drunk and have fun. But that's not me anymore. And so if you're not on the scene, it's just a hotel room and getting something to eat. And if you're on the scene, it's being on the scene and being exhausted and getting drunk and, that sort of thing. And I'm more the hotel and go to the hotel, get a bite to eat. That's, I prefer to go out to get something to eat instead of order in and then come back and maybe stop at a cigar bar or something like that. And then come back and watch whatever movies on AMC. Yeah. And and that's my life as on the road. And that's not that fun. So I love being at home.
That's similar to like the comedian life too, like because they're always touring, right? Where it's like you get to a city and I think too that when you have a job where you are traveling and touring and you have to do things like speak in front of people or perform or whatever, there's that certain level of, how much partying can you, obviously there's a lot of people who are entertainers who party hard when they're touring, right? But how much can you do and sustain that for a long time as well too? So it's like city to city, in the work capacity, it's not like you're getting to tour and do that sort of thing. And so like you said, if the other choice is to go out, you go out, get drunk, then you feel like crap when you have to go do your job.
Yeah. Or sometimes it's done afterwards and you feel like crap on the plane home. Or you're just exhausted on the way home. And none of that's interesting to me at this place in my life. It's just not fun. I'm very, very low key, very, very easy. Let me come home and relax and sleep and and get up and get back on the road.
Have you enjoyed being with your kids during this?
I love it. I love it. There's few things that I enjoy more. A buddy of mine was asking me, what's making you happy these days? And I said, man, I sometimes have a issue getting things done because I'm constantly walking around playing with my kids, interacting with them, patting them on the head, wrestling my sons, tickling my daughters, and irritating my wife, and getting in front of her for Zoom bombing, whatever she's doing, where she's get away from me.
It's like I'm on a conference,
right. So, I'm having a ball just around the house. I don't know how many people can say that, but I can.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I think it is. There's a lot of more people out there that can say that than don't. I feel like, some people are like, oh, it's crazy in the house. But I think for those of us who, initially kind of resisted all of this lockdown, for anybody who sort of surrendered to it, they probably did find that this is probably what a lot of us needed, was being able to just be home and be with our people and relax a little bit, right?
Yeah. And a trip to the grocery store is, it's fun. Yeah. A trip to the hardware, Lowe's or Home Depot, that's fun. Working on some project around the house, that's fun. Working on some academic so-and-so with one of my kids or several of my kids, or even supervising having one of them having an older sibling work with a younger sibling, making sure that they aren't ripping each other's heads off. That's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just normal life. I don't know how normal it is, but just regular everyday life stuff is fun to me. And you know what I have fun doing also? Reading the newspaper over a meal.
Oh, yeah?
Yes, I do. We get the newspaper still delivered to the house. Yeah. There was a period of time when I didn't, and I missed it. I really miss the newspaper, like the one that's in your hand.
Yes.
That you have to.
Not the Google.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, I'll do Google or the web version, but it's not the same. Yeah. I stumble upon so many articles when it's on when I have the hard copy that I wouldn't stumble across if I was looking at the virtual version. I love it. I love reading the newspaper. Yes, I said it.
No, I love that. Also, too, when you're reading an article in the newspaper, you're not inundated with ads and distractions and other things popping up, right? You can just sit there.
That's right.
Actually read. I remember my dad used to be big, especially the Sunday newspaper. My dad used to be big on sitting down, reading the newspaper, and he'd always give us the comic section to read when we were, kids and stuff. And it's sort of a lost art, that sort of, being, first of all, reading something that's tangible and in your hand.
Yeah. Yep.
And also just being with that one thing that you're doing. I feel like that's sort of a lost art as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome, though, that you've gotten to do that. I mean, I know that a lot of people are have struggled through 2020, financially and people who've dealt with health stuff. So I definitely wouldn't invalidate any of that. However, I do have to say there's a lot to be said for the value of being able to just sort of exist and be present with what you're doing and have to sit down for a while. You know what I mean?
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I really do. So.
And speaking of that, like, it's given me a lot of time to get really aware of the things that I want to express and relay and create in my business as well. And one thing that's come up recently is storytelling. Right? Like, how do one of the things they talk about a lot when it comes to marketing stuff and all of that, they talk about how telling your story is how you get people to understand what you've overcome, what challenges you've been through, and why you know what you know, or how you decided to pursue or learn whatever it is you're sharing that you know, right? And so I've been, going through, as I always am, trying to find better ways to package things and market things and, understand what I'm doing in my business. And it came up, like, I started thinking about storytelling and how that applies to relationships, like whether romantic, but mainly romantic, I was thinking about. And I was thinking about, how storytelling has affected different relationships in my life and how much it does affect our relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how we get to know each other, whether we get intimate. And so I wanted to pick your brain a little bit, Frank. And if you have any questions for me as well around it, but just things around, especially since I'm always dealing with my matchmaking clients, like, when do you tell people things and, navigating through that and how we get into a space of being able to share and also listen and hear, without shame and judgment. Mm-hmm. I mean, both of them without shame and judgment, right?
Yeah.
Like, I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Like,
there's so much there. I get the impression that when we're talking to each other, it really, some people are deep into judging what's said. And some people are just having fun talking. But I mean, even when you're having fun talking, you can get judgmental. But it can be a lot more fun just to talk and express, and it's like the experience becomes fun and much more fun than what you're determining what the person is saying means. Yeah, you know me. I love talking. I love talking and getting to know someone and just sharing our mutual stories. So, I mean, when you go out on that first date or second date or whatever, you get a chance to, people got all kinds of stuff they bring.
Right.
And so you find people who are into cars. That's not something I'm ever into and I don't care about. And I don't have any problem telling people I drive a 99 Camry. Now, mind you, this is this is 2000, whatever it is, 21 now. But I don't have any problem telling people that just in a social setting, much less, I'm not in the dating world at all. But in a social setting, I'll tell you the heartbeat. I drive a 99 Camry that's got a dent on the side and I have got no problem with it at all. Yeah. And that's like an opportunity to see where you fall on something like that. What are your thoughts? How do you respond to somebody who does not associate with valuing themselves based on their car? And that's a good, you might say, no, thank you. Check, please. I've got nothing in common with this guy. You're weird. Or
you're weird.
Yeah. Or you may be interested and, find what I just said interesting. And or you may just be like me. It's all just a journey. It's just like a way to play. Like going outside to play. It's just a way to play.
Right? Just having these conversations. I also think, too, it's like there is a difference between the things that you talk about that you might have in common, like things like the kind of car you drive and stuff like that, and then the stuff that is your personal story, like the stuff you've been, like you're how long you've been married?
15 years or something like that.
Yeah, so that's a good amount of time, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we're the same age, and I feel like you get to be of a certain age, and your stories have your single stories have built up, and you could be. I'm sure you have married stories that have built up, right?
Yes, I definitely do.
Right, that are in your bank. So let's say, God forbid, you were to become single again and date again, you'd have that bank of married stories still. Right. And some of them may or may not affect who you are in that current relationship. But, specifically coming from the space of being a single person, and by single, I just mean when I was in relationships because I wasn't married, I consider them part of my single experience. Does that make sense? Because I wasn't, if I look back in the last 15 years, relationships that I was in, maybe when I was in it, I saw a future. But, looking back now, I feel like those are just part of my single experience.
Okay.
Right?
All right. So you've never been married, so you've always been single in that definition, right?
In that definition, I've always been single. And it's interesting because, I had a 13-year relationship. So you would think, 13 years. I mean, like, you considered yourself, not at the time, I didn't consider myself single. But when I look back on it, I know that because we started, I think I was 21 when we started, and what that evolution was, what the trajectory of that relationship was. I look at it now, and I can say to my young self, you were single then. In as much as you were in love and that person was in love with you, and you were, as far as I know, only dating each other and very committed to each other and took good care of each other for a long time. Still, it wasn't there was no, I don't want to say officialness because it's not about necessarily what other people decide, but we both had a sense of if we wanted to walk away, we could walk away at any time. Right?
That's interesting. Do you mind talking about that a little bit, unpacking that?
No, we could unpack it a little bit.
Okay. All right. So you both had the feeling that you could walk away anytime, but that's the same in a marriage.
You think so? I feel like, people talk about divorce. I feel like, especially when they have kids and stuff, I feel like the walking away takes on a whole nother weight when you actually put all your legal stuff together. You got kids, possibly all that other stuff. Family has watched you walk down the aisle. You don't feel like it has a different weight to it?
Let me tell you. Let's go back a little bit because my wheels were spinning when you asked me how long I've been married, and people probably heard me say 15 years, something like that, and it was like he doesn't know how many years he's been married. All right, so let me give you a little history there. Okay. I say to my wife all the time, I married you the day I met you. Now, that was more than 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, we had our first child 13 years ago.
Okay.
And he's 13. So I consider that, a date of marriage when we had our first child together. And then we had our ceremony, I think it was 11 years ago. And so that's another date of marriage. And then we went to the actual Justice of the Peace. I don't even remember when we did that. That was around the same time as the ceremony. So in my mind, we've got 3 different marriage dates. And they're all real. And so when somebody asks me, I just basically say these days is about 15 years, and it's real. All of that to say, you could have seen yourself as married and function as though you were married without the ceremony. I mean, because marriage can be so many things. It could be when you say you're married. It could be clergy, in front of clergy. It could be in front of the community. It could be in front of, clergy. It could be in front of the Justice of the Peace, it could be so many. Marriage can mean different things to different people. Hell, you could even be considered married and never done any of the things that I just mentioned just by, in some places, common law marriage, where you live together after a year, or where you just simply say that you're married and somebody heard it. I think that's also can be considered common law marriage. So you got all of these different points where you could be considered married. So it's interesting hearing you, because you could have, if you sunk your teeth into it and your partner sunk their teeth into it, you all could have been considered married if that's what you wanted to consider it. Now, but you also have the opportunity to have an out now that you look back where, okay, the relationship didn't work out. That wasn't really marriage. We weren't really a couple, that you can have an out or you can have an in. It varies. It depends on just how you want to play the game.
No, I hear what you're saying. And here's the thing about that, because I agree with you in the sense that, if you put whatever people's maybe religious expectations or legal or social expectations aside, as far as what marriage means, let's say we can just define it however we want. I'm a big believer in declaration. And even back then, even though I didn't have the language or know how to identify it, I'm a big believer in the commitment between two people is a declaration on some level. And so, and I love that you mentioned common law marriage, because you made me think of my friend who's been with her boyfriend since we met in college. So 30 years they've been together. And we always tease them, right? We always tease them that they're common law because they never actually got married, but, in a public way. But, there was never any, and I guess that's why I look at it now. There was never, and I'm not saying this it was what was us missing. We didn't know to actually declare it as what it was. It's like we got together, we were young and gorgeous, and sexually attracted to each other, and we knew we had fun together, right? And up until we didn't. And there was never any, in those beginning years, specifically, any sort of I'm yours, you're mine, or, we're going to ride it till the wheels fall off, or this is what we're creating together. This is the future that we're going to make together. There was never any declaration of it. It's like we just sort of ended up in this thing where we were both only dating each other. And then we sort of started calling each other our boyfriend and girlfriend. And then before we knew it, the years had just, he went to med school, I went to grad school, and the years just whipped by, where we were still doing the boyfriend-girlfriend thing. And then when it came time to actually, I always say lock it down, because that's the mindset I had at that time, was we have to do this. He came from a Muslim family. I came from a Christian family. And even though neither one of us was strongly religious at that time, we still were so conditioned, and it was so ingrained in us that there had to be ceremony for something to mean anything, that there had to be some sort of public showing for it to mean anything. And me probably, actually, I won't say me more than him. I think me for him, my feelings that he had to be the one that I walked down the aisle with were stronger than I think in his mind. He had such conflict because of his family and the fact that I wasn't Muslim and wanting to align with his culture, that our thoughts about the importance of marriage, traditional marriage, actually probably are part of what split us up.
Was he Indian? He was
from Afghanistan. He was first generation, born in America, from Afghanistan. And even his mother and father, his mother had been arranged for his father. Like his father came to this country, he was a doctor, he was a heart surgeon, and had his own father send for his bride in Afghanistan. And that was my boyfriend's parents. So that was their history. And so their expectation of him was that he had to fit. I don't care if we raised you in the U.S., you have to fit with Afghani tradition. You have to marry somebody who's in alignment with our family. Mm-hmm. So. And
what did he end up doing? Did he end up having an arranged marriage?
I don't know if I would. I think I would classify it as somewhat arranged, like socially arranged within their culture. We broke up. And then we sort of were apart, and every now and then we'd be in touch or whatever. And it wasn't until 10 years later that he went ahead and got married. And, it was somebody who fit all the social requirements, and I don't want to take away from, because we don't talk enough for me to know whether they really fell in love or not. They might have. They have beautiful children. We're in touch on social media sometimes. So, I think that they're probably living a great life. But he did ultimately acquiesce to what was expected of him culturally.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. I'm certainly not asking to judge or trying to judge whether they were, he and his current wife, or if they're still together, or really love each other, or whether his parents really love each other. Yeah. I'm just curious as to how he ended up working it.
Yeah.
And it sounds as though he ended up working it.
He ended up working it, and it worked for him as far as like what he had in his future vision for his future life. And this is all hindsight talking, because obviously at the time I wasn't thinking in these terms. And what I had as my future vision, he and I never declared that or got aligned around that. So that's why when I look at it now, I think it was just a long-term boyfriend-girlfriendship, which to me, yeah. And for me, the distinction is just that yes, you can walk away from a marriage, you can walk away from an agreement, a declaration, but it's different than when you walk away from something that you never actually really committed to. And by committed, I just mean never actually consciously said, this is what we're doing together, or this is the plan. Right? Don't you feel that way? I feel like it's such a different.
It's powerful. It's powerful. I think of two stories. One is a movie that I just watched yesterday. And this movie it's called Evil Eye. And it was about a woman who was attacked. She split with her boyfriend 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And then she married her current husband and was pregnant. And then she was violently attacked by the previous boyfriend. And in the middle of the attack, she was pregnant. She was able to push him over a bridge and he died. Well, 30 years later, the daughter in America is now dating this guy. And the guy is what appears to be a reincarnation of the boyfriend that attacked the mother.
Yeah.
So all of this kind of, why does this come up? When I'm thinking about culture, in this movie, there was so much culture. There was the mother, and I think the father. The mother was really she was really wanting the daughter to be married, and they had arranged for the daughter to meet a guy who was, the same tradition.
Yeah.
And he was late for the date, so she ended up meeting this other guy who was also Indian, and this was around Indian culture. And so it was just interesting watching the culture unfold of it all. And I certainly respect it, but the crazy person twist made it a movie. Yeah. But it's interesting watching culture.
You said it's called Evil Eye?
Evil Eye. Yep, it's on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch it because that sounds really fascinating. I was gonna say what happened, but I don't want the spoiler. I want to watch it. I mean, it's interesting too because with matchmaking, I work a lot with South Asian cultured people, to match them, and it's very similar to that relationship that I had, Afghani culture, the way that they approach marriage and the business of marriage, and how intertwined it is in the family. It's very often, and I'm speaking very generally. Obviously, different people have their different experiences, right? But generally in the culture, it's very intertwined with how you navigate in your family, whether somebody can fit into your family. That's a big factor, I think, culturally. And that was a big factor in my relationship as well. Like, yeah. I don't think he felt like he could fully integrate, and I couldn't fully integrate into his family. His parents were like, it's a no-go. I mean, I was great with his siblings. We all got along great, but his parents were like, we don't even know what a girlfriend is. That doesn't exist. Like either you're engaged to be married or you're married. And if she's not Muslim, like, what are you even doing? Yeah.
It's fascinating watching. I mean, what you're saying about the interdynamics of the entire family, and just not the people. Yeah. It's real. It's real in even American
culture.
American culture, American relationships. And so when we are, a lot of the issues that we have, some of those issues are how our families get together, and our families, how they work together and get together and mesh, and how we mesh with our spouse's family and how our spouse meshes with our family. That stuff matters a lot. Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because as you're saying that, what comes to me is that in as much as I was always like, especially when I was young, because I thought I was so rebellious and I did what I wanted to do and all of that, I never fully understood how he, the depth of his emotion as far as his feeling connected and wanting to integrate properly with his family. I never understood why that was so important to him. But if I'm honest with myself, when I look back on it, there's been very, very few people that I've ever given the privilege of knowing my family. And by privilege, I'm saying, even though I talk a lot about whatever dysfunctions I complain about or this and that, I always felt like you're going to have to be so special to be able to integrate with my family. But I wasn't conscious of that until just this moment as we're having this conversation, that I was doing the same thing that he was doing.
He was doing the same thing.
But I was judging him for it. Right? I was judging him for it. Yeah. Like, oh, you need to be like me. Just be a rebel. Meanwhile, I was like, no, you can't hang out with my family. Like,
Right. You think this is? You're not on that level.
You're not on that level. You have to be somebody who my father would be proud of. And you know what that takes? A lot.
Right. I wonder how many brothers in just American culture, how many men actually go and meet their wife's father and mother and ask for her hand in marriage. I wonder how many men do that, if that's still done today. Because I've seen many instances when it's not done. I don't know if that's really our culture anymore.
Yeah.
I did it when I was married the first time.
You did,
and I thought that was the right thing to do, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
But it was I don't know if it's done. I don't know how much it's done. It's interesting.
It's possible to say, that it could be, without any sort of knowledge base or research around it, that it could be a dying art, because I feel like it's one of those things that is very much steeped in respect and tradition. And I hope that it's not a dying art, but I don't know that younger people know the importance of doing something like that. Like my brother and sister-in-law are almost 10 years older than me. They're like, between 8 and 9 years older than me. And I remember that my brother-in-law, you know, he's very much a gentleman. He's an officer and a gentleman, literally, because he's a general in the army. But he actually came and, you know, I remember being a kid and him actually coming and asking for my sister's hand in marriage. And my father adores him. Like, he loves him. He worships the ground he walks on, especially, you know, because of now, after all these years and his military service and, you know, how respectful he's always been to my dad. My dad, you know, considers my brother-in-law to be like a son.
Yeah.
And I think that if anything, hopefully it's not a lost art, but I think that in our culture, it's like we don't seem to exalt and value that sort of thing the way that we used to, or the way that traditionally people did, because we think, oh, you know, all that etiquette stuff, let's just be who we want to be. But some of that etiquette stuff really was about fostering respect and bonds and relationships, right?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that because you got to pay up front or you pay down the road. Yeah. I mean, but you're going to pay. Yeah. You pay now or pay later. That's really what I'm saying. And so when people do that, they're investing early in the relationship. And if you don't invest early, you're going to have to deal with what you didn't invest in or what you didn't work on later on. And it could be crazy. It's good to create a relationship. It's good to invest in what the culture of your partner is, what the culture of our parents are, what our parents are like prior to getting married. I mean, it's good to say to the father, I respect your position. I respect who you are, and I would like to make your daughter my family. That's a heck of a ritual, and you may avoid some other problems, complications down the road if you take that time early.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that. It's interesting too, because as you're saying that, what's coming up for me is, you know, like my parents, you know, thankfully are, you know, healthy and alive, although my mother does suffer from dementia. And right now they live in assisted living. And so one of the things that I think about for myself now, being a single woman, is that's a story that I would have to share and tell to someone new that I'm, you know, that I become in relationship with. And whatever I feel about that, whatever, you know, my overview is of the experience of having that be the case, like that's a story that I would have to share. Because
it absolutely is.
Right?
And I mean,
and because of the importance of what you're talking about, is like, you know, how do you intimately know a person if you don't really get to know where they came from or who they came from, right?
And you can see, I mean, I don't care how much you want to see it, but you can see origins of the way people solve problems and how they function in their family. And if you don't look, you're just ignoring good information. And I'm not talking about good meaning it's pleasant, but you're ignoring useful information. And you can ignore it all you want, but you know, I mean, but you're going to have to deal with it.
Right. Like whether people are like not speaking, or if there's a lot of unrest and dysfunction and things like that.
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I might have a lot of explaining to do. If I get into a relationship,
it's a real dynamic. It's a real dynamic, and we got to play our part in the equation, however you want to play it.
Yeah. Well, I also think too, like, even if, you know, for anybody out there who's listening as well, because I don't feel like at this point that there's a lot of dysfunction as far as my immediate family is concerned, you know, my immediate growing up family. I do feel like there is a lot of miscommunication and sort of holding on to old ideals or old knowings of each other. Like, it's like, I don't think that we've jumped the shark of, like, you know, having a new understanding of each other as adults or as individuals, right? But I don't think that that's a problem that is, like, it's one of those things that's only as shameful as I let it be.
Yeah,
Do you know
that's
what I
right.
mean? And I think that's true for other people who have like really deep-seated dysfunction in their family. I feel like in the sharing of that story, it's only as if you view it as shameful, what you're saying to someone you're becoming intimate with is that you have stuff that you're not dealing, like you're still judging yourself, or that you feel, you're devaluing yourself or your family. And I think that's where the red flag might come. Even if they don't know how to identify it as that, I think that's what people hone in on. Not, your mother was a drug addict, which some people have that as their backstory, right? And
that's right.
And everything that comes from that, even if she's sober now. But I don't think people would say, or at least not healed people would say, oh, I can't be with you because your mother was a drug addict. I can't be with you because you're still in that story and carrying around all the baggage that comes from having had a mother who was a drug addict, and it's affecting who you are in this relationship.
Well, it could be a litany of translations, because some people will say, I can't be with you because that's in your history and you might be a drug addict too. And when you have someone like that, it could be good to know that someone is intolerant of you or would be intolerant of you if X, Y, and Z showed up. I mean, it sounds like you're being rejected, but you are also learning about that individual and how they would deal with you or how they are dealing with you. So it's not let's not automatically see that as intolerance, or, well, we could see it as intolerance, but let's not see it as rejection, because you're learning about that individual also. And then the other thing is, if some people are just meant for us. They have a temperament that will go well with our family culture and us. So, yeah, if I say I've got drug abuse in my family history, somebody would say, okay, and they may understand that may be an issue that I would have to wrestle with possibly in the future. And they may very well say, okay, we'll just wrestle with it when it comes, if it comes. And you decide you gotta do whatever it is that your family lineage has laid out as a possibility. I'll be right here. And that's a beautiful thing to learn about somebody also. So there's so many translations that can come as a result of quote unquote intolerance or quote unquote acceptance.
No, I love that you said that it's a beautiful thing to learn as well, because I think it's in the being able to tell our story that we do get an opportunity. We give ourselves an opportunity to learn about how people respond to it, right?
That's right.
Yeah, like whether it's possible. And I love that you're pointing to rejection being a favor.
That's right.
Right?
And get this. There's also the part you said, the telling of our story, but there's also stuff that we will learn from not telling our story. So you and I are dating. I somehow learned that your mother and father used to be heroin addicts, but you never tell me that. I'm still learning. So there's a story that you may not be telling me, but that's a story too. What you don't say, what you don't share, what you demonstrate that you are, that you have a trepidation about sharing, or that you may be ashamed about sharing, that's still a part of your story. And I still get to accept you for that. I still get to accept the shame or the issues that you have with that and still give you a hug and possibly continue to move forward in a relationship, knowing that's a difficult scenario, a difficult dynamic that you have had to deal with or are dealing with. I still get to give you a hug, and I still I could give your parents a hug. It's still, what you don't share is sharing. It sounds backwards, maybe, but it's real. It's real. What we don't talk about is a form of communication.
No, I hear that. I absolutely hear that. I mean, I hear that from the point of view of, if I'm the person who discovers something about someone, the opportunity for me is to be in acceptance and practice acceptance if I really care about that person. Like it's an opportunity to express love for that person, right?
That's right.
But as the person on the other side who hasn't shared or has something who's afraid to share, I also hear that as, okay, so maybe I can just not say this thing and they'll find out and which I guess, there's an infinite amount of situations that people may or may not want to share with another person. So there's no like shaming if you don't want to share something with someone. But I think that the consideration of the value in being willing to share it and how much sharing our stories helps to heal us is just something to have as a possibility, even if it's something, because here's the reason I say this, and from a personal standpoint, my last relationship, the one I always talk about that was highly abusive, I had things that I had no intention of sharing, right? And whether it was like, we have a lot of sort of notions in our culture, like, men don't want to know how many men you've ever had sex with, or, what your sexual history is, or, how you felt about other people, or, things like that are just, whatever. It's like cultural bullshit, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So I had a lot of, stuff in my mind where either I had shame around it, or, it was stuff that I didn't feel the person that I was with would be able to digest or to understand. There was a part of me that didn't fully trust that he loved me enough that I could tell him things that weren't great about me. And he took it upon himself to just read all of my journals and find out whatever he wanted to find out, right? And really dug into it. Now, I say all of that to say, his response to all of it was to then use those things against me. Like if we ever had conflict, or if we got in an argument or something came up, like he had ammunition. And because I hadn't healed a lot of it, it was serious ammunition. So I'm not saying that like, oh, here's a cautionary tale, you have to tell all your stuff. But I am saying that to say the things that we do shame about ourselves and feel like they have to be secret, the opportunity I feel like I missed was that there was some of that I could have shared up front and learned about who he was and where he was at with it right away. But I was so busy trying to keep it close to the vest because I had shame around it that, it ended up kind of backfiring. I wasn't dealing with somebody who was like, oh, I see you've been through that. Let me give you a hug. I was dealing with somebody who was like, I know you're ashamed and now I'm going to make you feel even more shameful about it.
Yeah, let me tell you, I got a little bit of a story. I had a girlfriend once who was a snooper. I mean, and to the point where she would be like, look, you know who I am. You know how I do.
Not even unapologetic.
But the thing was, when she would snoop on me, I would just be like, whatever, there was nothing you could find about me that I was going to be shamed about, that I was going to drop my head with. So you had two people who were not doing the shame thing. She wasn't ashamed of snooping. Yeah. And I wasn't ashamed of anything that you was going to find out about me. Yeah. It was just, and so in its own crazy way, it worked. It worked. And I think the people she had previously dated, that she had her hooks in them. Like she was able to say, I got you. I caught you. Yeah. I know what you. And I was like, whatever. You got what you got, and you know what you know, and all right, let's go get something to eat. Yeah.
So let me ask you this though: what ended up having it not work out?
Oh man, she did what she wanted to do more than I was comfortable with it. She was just a person who wanted to do it the way she wanted to do it, didn't care about how it affected other people or whether I was ready to do it with her. She wanted to do what she wanted to do when she wanted to do it.
Yeah.
That was really it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that falls right in alignment with snooping and being so unabashed about it, right? Like, I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. Like, I feel like when shame's not in the story, you can deal with something and it is what it is, right? When shame is in the story, then it becomes a whole another animal.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right? It becomes a whole nother thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
How do we get to these tangents?
I
Seems like we
love it.
started, I don't know where we started, but
But I think we stayed
I'm happy to be wherever we are, and but it's wow.
Right? Well, the whole topic is the importance of telling your story. So I feel like we stayed pretty much in the vein of that.
I can see that.
Right?
I see that. Yes.
What do you feel like? I mean, I know for me, what is the takeaway? What do you feel like is sort of the takeaway we want people to be able to have, whether in a relationship or not, when it comes to telling your story, telling your truth? So some of us out there married for a long time and we got some secrets we haven't told yet, but we might want to or need to for whatever reason. Some of us out here are single and feeling ashamed about something or keeping it secret and thinking that that's going to be the thing to keep us from being able to have a relationship with somebody. Like, what do you feel like is sort of the takeaway as far as, the telling of your story and the desire to even tell your story?
Watch your shame.
Yeah.
Watch your shame.
I agree.
And get this. Oh, I didn't say this, but the girlfriend I was telling you about, she was not a person that shared a lot overtly. She would not lie about things
She just kept
overtly, but she wasn't going to tell you if you didn't ask.
Yeah.
And there were things that she was ashamed of sharing.
Yeah.
And that she didn't share in the relationships that she had later on. It's wild. It's wild.
It makes sense, though.
It does. It does. And it did. Yeah.
Even with my ex, even though he didn't become unabashed about the snooping until much later, until it came out. And then we'd had a lot of fights about it. But when he was sneaking around and doing it, like, I didn't realize until, we'd gotten to know each other better that not only was he able to hone in on my shame, it was because he had a lot of shame himself as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of, like, even though he definitely came off like, oh, whatever, but, so many of his actions were around, feeling inadequate, feeling insecure, feeling ashamed, and feeling, not right in some way. So, yeah, I think that's where that comes from, that need to sort of excavate without intimate asking.
I can see that.
Right?
I can see that. Or just intimate connection.
Without intimate connection, yeah. Without giving, go ahead.
Well, you asked what's the takeaway. I suspect the takeaway is be aware of your shame.
Yeah.
Be aware of how you use shame in your own life and how you use it on other people. Because many of us are ashamed of things ourselves and know I want to say the hurtfulness or how shame affects us. Yeah. But we also use it negatively against other people. Instead of knowing how negatively it affects us and not using it against other people because we know how bad it could feel to feel shame or to be shamed. It's wild. There's no real karma to it. Yeah. It's kind of it's a very significant imbalance where we're hurting, but we are willing to hurt other people.
Yeah. No, it's true. Hurt people hurt.
Yes, that's real. True. So I guess that's the takeaway that at least I'm sinking my teeth into right now. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, I want to build on what you're saying because I absolutely 100% agree. I think it's about looking at that shame story and saying to myself, if there's something I'm walking around with and I know I don't want to tell it, but there's a part of me that feels like things aren't going to work out unless I tell it, or something's going to go wrong if I don't tell it, whether I'm in a relationship or out of a relationship. I think that the takeaway, the thing to focus on is what do I need to do to heal it so it doesn't have to be a shame story anymore. I mean, no matter what it is, like even if it's something that you were a victim of, some people are walking around with sexual trauma. Some people are walking around with mistakes that they know they made that they're ashamed of because maybe they've changed their lives around or, you know, whatever. I think that happens a lot with addiction, you know, when people are ashamed of who they were as an addict. I feel like that's the key right there because, you know, our romantic relationships, they are there to heal us when we let them, I feel like they are opportunities for our growth, our evolution, and to be able to see ourselves mirrored. And I think that when we want love, whether we're in a relationship that's not giving it to us or if we're single, when we want to connect and we're holding on to things and we're withholding, it's like we have to ask ourselves, why do I feel shameful? What is going on with it? And what do I need to heal so that I can take the shame out of the story? Because we all got shit. We all got shit.
Yes, we do. Right? Yes, we do. Mm-hmm.
And that's one reason that I'll always be grateful for that relationship, you know, the guy that snooped through all my stuff, because the major gift that he gave me was to shine a light on all the stuff that I was shaming myself about that I had no business shaming myself about.
Mm-hmm. This is who I am. You get the opportunity to say, this is who I am. This is what I'm dealing with. Can you love me anyway?
Yeah.
It's a big question.
And if you can't, that's okay. Right?
Yeah. That's right.
Like if you can't, it's okay. You don't have to.
And maybe you can, and you don't know that you can. And hey, that's something to look at also, because we often put up barriers in our relationship where we want to. Oh, this is we're almost an hour in. I'm about to start something else.
Still got a few minutes though.
Yeah, we often put up what I say deal breakers.
Yeah.
that are just things that we just don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
It's not things that we can't deal with. It's things that where I'm saying to you, look, this scares me. To have to deal with this in a relationship would scare me. And I'm telling you up front that I'm not going to stand for it. And it's really a way of saying, I don't intend to love you if I have to deal with this.
Yep.
And I want to scare you so much so that you don't bring this to my doorstep.
Yeah.
You don't bring this to my life. But it's really nonsense. It's really a way of communicating how you don't intend to love, or you don't believe that you can love through a given situation. It's a cop out. It's a cop out.
I love that nugget so much because I think we do that and we let it masquerade as boundaries. We call it boundaries, right?
That's right. That is absolutely right.
Yeah, like what you just said was just golden. Like that's a nugget. And just from dealing with my matchmaking people all the time, I'm always like, these little stipulations and conditions that you're putting up, you're just holding yourself back from loving somebody and then for them to love you. It's like, oh, well, if he lives 50 miles away, like really? Really? You don't want to find out if you could love a person because they live 50 miles away.
Right.
You know what I mean? All the way to, you know, even other conditions that might be more personal conditions. Like they can't be shorter than 5'10", or they can't be this, or they can't be that. Yeah, I totally love that. Thank you for that nugget, Frank. I think that's a great nugget to close on.
All right. Well, I'm glad I was able to drop one in the circle. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And thank you for all you do. And thank you for this forum. And thank you for having me. And just thank you.
It's my pleasure. You know I love it. Give people your website.
FrankLove.com. And really, we're switching to a new website, so it's frank-love.com right now, but it'll all be the same soon.
Yeah, okay. So frank-love.com. Definitely go and visit Frank Love, my Frank. Get some more nuggets of wisdom, get some coaching, get some speaking.
Thank you.
Right? Yeah, yes. And that is it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. You know, like I said, you can subscribe to Ask for Candy on Anchor, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. You can email us, askforcandypodcast@gmail.com. Send your questions and comments. And until next time, never forget that you are a love machine. If you ever start to feel like you aren't getting the love you need, just make more and ask for candy. Bye, everybody.